Dear students, welcome back to my lecture series on Java programming. We have started the Java exception handling lecture series. In part 1, we have covered what is exception, what are the types of errors, what are the common runtime errors. Then we learned without error handling how the program stops when runtime error occurs. So before part 2, let me remind you to subscribe my channel, and if you like my lectures, so press the like button, and if you have any query, then please send me your query through comments. I will reply your query. So now we'll start part 2 on Java exception handling. Now first of all, let me tell you actually what is the advantage of this exception handling. Why we have to do it? Because the exception handling is the mechanism which gives you the normal flow. The core advantage of exception handling is to maintain the normal flow of the program. An exception handling normally disrupts the normal flow of the application or program. That is why we use exception handling, so that our program should not stop if there is any error. What we want actually, if there is any error, then too our program should not stop, it should go on, right? So now for example, let's take an example that we have different statements. Suppose there are 10 statements in our program and there occurs an exception at statement number 5. Suppose there is a error in statement number 5. So the rest of the code will not be executed, right? That is, statement number 6 to 10 will not be executed. So if we perform exception handling, the rest of the statement will be executed. That is why we use exception handling in Java. So I think now it is very clear why we have to do it, exception handling. So actually traditional way of error handling says, last example when I said the value of A is 7 and B is 0, so division by 0 is an exception, right? So now again see the program. If I have to handle this error, right, without Java exception, then how I am going to do it? So class with error handling, public static void main string argument int a comma b, a is equal to 5, b is equal to 0. Now if b not equal to 0, so my program will give the output system.out.println will say result is a divided by b, right? Now if suppose b is 0, so it will print the result a divided by, if b is not 0, if b is not 0, it will say the result a divided by b. Else if b is 0, so it will say system.out.println will say b is 0, right? So it will not stop here. My program will complete, my program will be executed. So system.out.println program is complete. So I will reach till here and I will see the output. If suppose I will run this program, so after execution, if suppose b is 0, this time my program will execute. So you might be knowing that last example I had covered without error handling. So that time a is 7, b is 0, my program is not reaches to a divided by b because it shows that there is an error, division by 0 error. So now in this, without doing Java exception handling, I am doing this in a traditional way. But again, there is a point. If suppose this is the traditional way, then why Java exception handling is there? Because this is for one variable. If suppose we have n number of variables, so we cannot do validation to each and every variable, right? So for that reason, Java exception handling is required. Okay. So now here, error handling says any program can find itself in unusual circumstances, like error condition. So error condition can be there in any program. So a good program should be able to handle these conditions gracefully. Like Java has given exception handling. So if there is any error, so Java gives us the platform where we can handle that errors. So Java provides a mechanism to handle these error conditions, which are known as exceptions, right? Now, exceptions means an exception is a condition that is caused by a runtime error in the program. Now, this is very important to understand. Exceptions are generated when there is a runtime error. So, when the Java interpreter encounters an error, it creates an exception object and throws it. Now, this is again important. What Java interpreter does actually, it sees that there is a runtime error. So, it will not stop your program. But what it will do, it will raise an exception through the throws clause. So, exception handling is a mechanism which provides a means to detect errors and throw exceptions and then to catch exceptions by taking appropriate actions. Now, exceptions and their handling. So, when the JVM encounters an error such as divide by 0, that is division by 0. So, it creates an exception object and throws it as a notification that an error has occurred. So, in Java, we have a try and catch block, right? So, what try does? Try is used to detect the errors, and when the errors are detected, it is throws by using the catch block. So, if the exception object is not caught and handled properly, the interpreter will display an error and terminate the program. So, if we want the program to continue with execution of the remaining code, then we should try to catch the exception object thrown by the error condition and then take appropriate corrective actions. And this task is known as exception handling. Now, exception handling can be done in Java. And what is that mechanism? How to handle the exception? So, first of all, the first statement says, find the problem. Now, find the problem means, if suppose in a program, I know that there is an input part in a program, in each and every program. There is an input part, processing part and output part. Now, in input part, error can be generated. How? If suppose I want to enter, I want an integer value. So, I know that Java takes input in the form of text. So, if suppose texts are given, so I have to convert that into the integer part. So, if conversion is not proper, then that time exception is generated. So, find the problem, that means in the input part there may be an error, so that is a problem. Inform that an error has occurred. So, what does it mean? That means when the input section will produce an error like hit the exception, then that exception should be throw. Throw means it should be notified to the compiler. Then the compiler will receive the error information in the section catch the exception. So, it will catch the exception, and inside that catch exception block, it will take the corrective actions, which is known as handle the exception. So, in terms of, in Java's language, we can say that hit the exception, then throw the exception, catch the exception and handle the exception. So, Java exception handling is managed via 5 keywords. This is again very important point. In every examination, these are asked. What are the different mechanism or what are the keywords which are used to handle Java exceptions. So there are 5 keywords: try, catch, throw, throws, and finally. So now let me explain each one by one. Now what is a try? Try says program statement that you want to monitor. That means the statement which you know that their exception can be generated. So the statement that you want to monitor for exceptions are contained within a try block. Like for example, all input section is there in the try block. If an exception occurs within the try block, it is thrown, right? So it is thrown. Where it is thrown? In the catch block. So your code can catch this exception using catch and handle it in some traditional manner. So what throw will do? Throw is a system generated exceptions like Java does are automatically thrown by the JVM, Java Runtime Environment, Java Runtime System. To manually throw an exception, we have to use the keyword throw, right? Now throws is what? Any exception that is thrown out of a method. So method means a function. So inside the function, if there is any error may be occurring, so that error will be thrown by using the keyword throws. Then finally, any code that absolutely must be executed, right? Now for example, a try block is there where the exception is monitored. Catch will catch that exception. Throw is what? System generated exceptions are automatically thrown by the Java. If we want to do it manually, then we have to use throw, and throws is for the functions. So inside the function, if error can come, then that time we used to write throws. And last, finally, is a block, any code that absolutely must be executed. If suppose there is an error, and I know that when error will come, try and catch after that, if I want some statement should be generated, should be executed, that time that statement should be kept inside the finally block. So any code that absolutely must be executed before a method returns is put in a finally block. So I think these 5 keywords we should understand clearly. So I will explain one by one with the example program. So before that, I must say that what are the common Java exceptions. So common Java exceptions are like arithmetic exception, as we know that division by 0 error comes inside this class. Array index out of bound exception, again if the array size is out of bound, that it comes under the class array index out of bound exception. Then array store exception, file not found exception, IO exception, null point exception, security exception, stack overflow exception, string index out of bound exception. All these are common Java exceptions. So these exceptions can be handled, right? Now how to handle these exceptions? So a method can signal an error condition by throwing an exception inside the by using the throws keyword. In a program, the calling method can transfer control to an exception handler by catching an exception using the try catch block. And if we want cleanup, right? Cleanup means we want to free our memory. We want to do the cleanup, right? So cleanup can be done in the finally block. So exception handling mechanism says, now see this diagram. This is very important diagram where we can say that try block is there and catch block. In the try block, we have to keep all those statements which can cause exception, and that can be throw by using the throws exception object to the catch block. And the catch block will do what? In the catch block consists of those statements that handle the exception. So now today I have explained what is the exception handling mechanism, how to use the 5 keywords for exception handling mechanism, and this is the diagram for exception handling mechanism. So if you like my lecture, then please like it and do comment so that I will reply you. If you have any query, please do the comment.